Meeting for Monday, March 4th, 2019. Please note that everyone is here and accounted for. If we can please stand for the opening prayer by Mr. Alderman Jeremy Biggs, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, thank you for everyone that's gathered here tonight. We ask your blessings on the people who have been called to lead this community in which we live and work. Remind us that we are not only leaders, but we are also servants, and it's our responsibility to serve the common good of our citizens and employees. Grant this board the wisdom to govern wisely, and grant the board the ability to work together in harmony when there is honest disagreement. Please give us an assurance of what would please you and what will benefit those who live and work in Arlington. Please watch over and protect our town citizens, town employees, and school children. In Christ's name I pray, amen.
Amen. Mrs. Howard, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. I've had this one. No, this was probably last year's sidewalk sale. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the February 4th, 2019 meeting and the special called meeting on February 12th, 2019? We can do both those together if there's no objection.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Mr. Brooks. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? That item passes. Next up is grievances and comments from citizens. This is a chance we give anyone to speak on any particular topic. I'm looking around. There may be somebody here that wants to speak, but I pretty much know everybody here. Is there anyone here that's wanting to speak tonight on anything? Man, y'all are making it easy. Move on to the next communications from Mayor. Sheriff's Department report. Lieutenant Crowder, thank you.
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Crowder here to present the report for the month of February of 2019 for the town of Arlington. We only had 18 reports that came into the sheriff's office, which is a decrease from the previous month. We had 27. So the citizens of Arlington did an outstanding job for the month of February, and we appreciate the work and helping us keep those numbers down. We had no thefts from motor vehicles, and we had no burglary thefts at all that was reported. And we thank the citizens. Continue to report any suspicious activities to us. We need that so we can get in and be able to show a high presence in those areas where crime may be arising. So we thank everyone. I just wanted to mention on a couple of the incidents, we had 18, which was good. We did make some arrests. We had 2 theft from buildings. The victim was able to provide suspect information. So we do have suspect information, and our detectives is working on that. Other thefts, it was cleared by arrest on Wednesday, February the 6th. So we cleared that one by arrest, which is outstanding. The citizen was able to give us the information. Our detectives went in and was able to clear it by arrest. We had the second one that came in was the counterfeit forgery. It was cleared by arrest just as well. The victim was able to provide the suspect information. The arrest was made on scene, which happened on Thursday, February the 21st. So we thank the citizens for working with our detectives unit, and we thank all the citizens of Arlington for helping us bring those numbers down. If you still need the sheriff's office on traffic complaints, please give us a call so we can know what area we need to saturate. And if you need any help with setting up neighborhood watch programs or neighborhood association, please give us a call. We have a direct individual that's a coordinator that's over those programs, and they'll be able to help the community enhance, if you like, enhancement and give new ideas on new technology. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Lieutenant Crowder. I was making sure Chief didn't need to go. I heard his tone go off. I wasn't sure, so.
Yes, sir.
If you need to go, please feel free to go. Thank you, Lieutenant Crowder. Is there any questions for Lieutenant? Mrs. Pardue.
There was a lot of chatter about ticketings that were happening at the middle school this past week. Do you have much information as far as the specificity of those tickets that were given out. And I think there might be some confusion as to why some maybe have been ticketed and others not. So just maybe some information along those lines.
At this time, I don't have any information on it.
Okay.
I could have asked the traffic division commanders to give me a briefing before this meeting, but if I find that information, I will email you.
And on that same note, I did talk to Ms. Mason earlier today, and they were unaware of anything. And then I think Dr. Clark had called Ms. Mason asking, I think there was, I don't know the reason or rationale. I mean, if they're doing something illegal or writing tickets, but I don't think it was anything. I think it was something that the sheriff's department's within their rights to do from what we understand from the school system right now. It wasn't anything that the town or that the schools asked for.
Houses facing Memphis Arlington right there have no parking signs in front between certain hours, so it allows the residents to park out front during off-school hours, but during school hours, you're not supposed to park in front of those residences. So I would imagine it would have something to do with it.
Yeah. I think there was some chat, and I don't know what always is true from chats that you hear, but some of them were saying that they were moving and getting the violation. I don't know if that's true. It may be they're getting there an hour early, and that's within the time. I mean, I know that the sheriff's department wrote tickets over by the high school where the kids cut through, and I probably shouldn't say this, but one of the parents that called and asked for the sheriff's department came out, also called me back and got upset because their daughter got a ticket.
There's signs over there saying no parking, no stand.
Yeah, so it was one of those things that happens, and I didn't know what to tell the gentleman, but I tried to tell him it's the sheriff's department's right, if especially if you're the one calling, and ask them to come out and increase the presence. So we appreciate what you guys are doing. Just on the sheriff's department issue, I did have it under my notes. On March 19th here at Town Hall, Sheriff Bonner and some of his command staff will be here for just an open town hall forum. This is something that Commissioner Amber Mills asked for. We were looking for a location. We were talking about doing it at the high school. Of course, I hate to say turnout on those are usually low, but it is something that Commissioner Mills had asked about, and I kind of helped coordinate it through Chief Wright, and she should be advertising that through her office, but that'll be on March 19th here. I'm not sure the exact time yet. I'm not sure. I think they're going to work whatever the sheriff's schedule is, but that will be here with a couple of his command staff for anybody who wants to come in and hear the resources of the sheriff's department, ask questions directly to the sheriff or his staff, and so I just want to make everybody aware of that.
I did have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
The zero thefts from motor vehicles, I think that's the first time that I can remember. Just out of curiosity, did we catch some people? Were there some arrests made?
Yes, our detectives made several arrests in the
Okay.
month of January. And so they was linking them back to some of our reports that was reported here in Arlington.
All right, great.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Lieutenant Crowder? Okay. And I will make sure, I will call Commissioner Mills and ask her for the notification of what time that is, but we'll post it on the town website, town Facebook, and like I said, hopefully she's going to communicate that as the best she can too for anybody in the community to come out. Thank you, Lieutenant.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next up, the most exciting day of the year, the audit report.
I would be too.
Chief, do you need to go anywhere? Okay, all right. Mr. Hewitt, good to see you again.
Thank you. Everybody always loves those law enforcement citations until you get them yourself, and nobody likes them. The last one I got, I thank the officer for giving me one. Okay, you got the audit there. We almost had this finished in time to get to you last time, but we didn't quite, so we couldn't make it last meeting. Let me give you a brief explanation. I know this is a couple months later, and we normally get it to you. Of course, we can't finish our report until the school system report is issued. And the last couple of years, through nobody's fault, just changes in what has to go into the report, that's been a little bit later every year. We didn't get it until almost Christmas this last year. And again, I'm not sure that's anything that anybody can do anything about. It's, this year, the holdup, and we experienced it with a lot of our audits, was the implementation of a new accounting standard for other post-employment benefits. And we had to wait on information from the state of Tennessee, which I'm sure the school auditors did also.
Well, you do have a school board member that used to be up here that you can talk to.
Well, we're okay with that. But when you do audit, and we're the auditors of some towns that have 3 or 4 components that go into the audit report. And when we bring them all together, we got to wait on everybody to get done. So sometimes that does slow it down. It's not quite as simple as it was when we all were asleep at the little crossroads community 20 years ago. Okay. If you'll flip over about 7 pages in, you've got our audit report there. I want to highlight a couple of things. The second paragraph says management's responsibility for the financial statements. And I always am sure to point this out because we own four pages in this audit report. Well, actually 5, because this letter goes on 3 pages. We own 5 pages. All the rest of it's yours. You know, we help you in producing it. It's bound in our covers, but it's still your financial statements. And you all have the primary financial or primary responsibility for that. Our responsibility is simply to give you a report as to whether or not those financial statements accurately reflect the financial condition of the town and the results of operations for last year. Now, since our firm does not audit the school system, then we have to rely on the school system's auditor. So our report, in so much as it covers the school system financial statements that are incorporated in this, is solely reliant upon the school system's auditor and their report, which we did get a copy and we did read it. Okay, the next page, our opinion there, it's kind of long, but basically it says everything's good. It's what we call a clean opinion, that the financial statements are a fair representation of the financial condition of the town. The second paragraph, that's just there for emphasis. There was a new accounting principle that was, when it came into effect this year, had a pretty dramatic effect on the school system's financial statements, which by inclusion then are incorporated in this report, but it didn't have any effect on what you all are directly responsible for. And when we get to that, I'll point that out. Okay, if you'll flip over to page 11. Okay, this is a statement of net position. This is on the accrual basis, so it's got big numbers in it. Sometimes when I present this for some of our clients, I look around and I see people in the audience, their eyes get a little wide when we start talking about, well, in your case, $181 million in assets. The vast majority of that is what you have invested in infrastructure. So it's, while you may have $181 million worth of assets, you don't have $181 million worth of stuff that you can do something with, other than use the buildings that you have and the roads and so forth. But anyway, the first column there is pretty much all the operations of the town and the school system. Those are the governmental activities. The second column, the business type activities, for you all, that is solely just a sewer system. That is considered a business type activity. The differential between those is governmental activities by design are not designed to make money or to be self-supporting. They're supported through taxes. Business type activities by design and definition should support themselves. Usually what you see is in business type activities would be utilities. Okay, total cash was $29 million for your governmental activities and just under $4 million for the business type activities. Investments, $13.4 million for governmental activities and $7 million for the business type activities. If you flip over to the next page, and your total assets were $181 million and $33 million respectively for each of those. These are your liabilities and your net position. The liabilities of the governmental activities were just under $11 million. Of business type activities, $10.6 million. Now I want to point one thing out here because it's a big number and you haven't seen it before, so I want to explain what it is. If you look under liabilities under governmental activities, you see something called a net OPEB obligation, $4.3 million. That's not new, and what that is, it's not new, but it is new in how it's presented. What that is the school system has in their policies and procedures and their contracts with their employees, they have committed to fund post-employment benefits other than retirement. For the most part, that's usually health insurance. And in the past, that has always just been disclosed in the notes where nobody really sees it sometimes. And the Governmental Accounting Standards Board decided to change that. It's probably a good change. The private sector went this way years ago to require disclosure of the actual amount of that liability. That doesn't mean it's going to be paid anytime soon, but it does mean there is an obligation there of $4.3 million. And the reason, you all will probably remember when pension obligations became reportable on the balance sheet, and you didn't see a big number show up. In fact, the pension obligation for the school system is actually an asset. They're overfunded by $534,000. And the reason this big number shows up here is because typically other post-employment benefits are not funded. With pensions, people are setting money aside to fund those pensions. And other post-employment benefits, you can fund them, but most governments do not. It's just on a pay-as-you-go, which is the reason why you got such a large number there. And I believe the vast majority of that is through the state of Tennessee, but there's several plans that they have. Okay, down under net position, the net investment in capital assets is $128 million in the governmental activities, 11.3 in the business type activities. And you have some restricted. The two biggest numbers there are $4.5 million in the State Street Aid Fund and $18 million for education. And then the unrestricted portion, $16.7 million, that's what's available to be spent. And $11 million in the business type activities. Okay, if you go to page 14. Now what I've gone over so far is these are the financial statements have been converted to the accrual basis. Your capital assets and your debt, it all gets lumped into those. And that's not what you guys are used to seeing when you look at financial statements every month. What we'll go over from this point on is the fund financial statements, which is what you're used to seeing. These numbers look a little bit more familiar to you. On this page, the column you'd be most interested in would be the general fund. Cash of $5 million, investments of 11.2. The taxes receivable, I think I point this out every year, but sometimes people forget it. You aren't actually owed $4.1 million in property taxes or delinquent property taxes at June 30, 18. If you look down under liabilities, it's called deferred inflows resources. You'll see a line that says unavailable revenue property taxes, just over $4 million. That's an offset to that. You net those two numbers, and that's what you have receivable in property taxes. That is a quirky confluence of the accounting standards and the Tennessee Constitution that requires that. And what that 4.07 million is, that's your 2018 tax levy that you all didn't approve until probably June or July when you passed the 2018 or 2019 budget. And under state law, that actually, even though you haven't passed it yet, that actually attaches to the real property of the citizens on January the 1st, and that's why that's got to be in there. We complained to the comptroller one time about that, and they said, well, it's constitutional, so we'd have to amend the state constitution, and that's not an easy process. So we said, well, okay. We'll just explain it every year. Okay. Down under fund balances, you've got some assigned fund balances in the general fund that you all have designated that you're going to use for certain activities. But for the most part, $16.5 million is unassigned and available for whatever the town wants to spend it on. Okay, go to 16 if you would. And this is summarized, and I'll tell you what the budget numbers are. The first column there is the general fund, and then if you want, so anybody's got any questions, we can go into the detailed statements. They're quite a bit longer. You had revenues of $9.7 million in the general fund. You budgeted $9 million. So if you're gonna have a variance in your revenues, that's always a good one to have. You collect more than you actually budget that you're gonna get. What accounted for that biggest variance was was sales tax, local sales tax and state shared revenues. The local sales tax is $382,000 more than you budgeted, and the state shared revenues is $304,000 more than you budgeted. And I would guess your sales tax will keep on climbing. Every time I drive to Arlington, I see new commercial business, which drives your sales tax, obviously. Under expenditures, you spent $6.44 million. You had budgeted $7.3 million. So again, that's $900,000 less than what you had budgeted. And I looked through, and there's no one thing that really accounts for that. The two biggest variances I saw were capital outlay in general government and capital outlay in the fire department were both quite a bit under what you had budgeted, and that's not uncommon. A lot of times you plan on buying a piece of equipment, and for whatever reason, you don't do it till the next year. So and that's probably what happened in this case. So the revenues over expenditures were $3.27 million, and then you did issue a small amount of debt, and then transfers to other funds, which went primarily to the school department and also to the State Street Aid Fund for $1.4 million. So your net increase in fund balance was $1.95 million. Okay, if you go to, let's flip on over to page 37. And this is the sewer fund. Okay, assets of $33 million with 11 million of that being in cash and investments. Liabilities of 10.7 with the vast majority of that being what's due on your long-term debt. All right, you flip over to page 38. This is the operating statement for the sewer fund. Had revenues of $2.54 million, expenses of $1.64, for an operating income of just over $900,000, and then some interest earned on investments and long-term debt, interest paid and debt fees paid, and that the interest earned and the interest paid netted out to a decrease of $184,000. So that all nets out to a increase before contributed capital of $717,000. That $179,000 capital contributions, that is, the majority of that is from developers as they build sewer plant and turn it over to you. That shows up on your financial statements as a capital contribution. So the increase in net position for the year was $897,000. Okay, let's flip all the way back to page 95.
say
amount-
95? 95, I'm sorry.
95, yeah. It's sideways. You have to turn your book sideways to read this one. There's two funds on here that you all are directly responsible for, the sanitation fund and the street aid fund. Sanitation fund's got $966,000 in assets, and just about fund balance of about the same amount. State Street Aid Fund has got $4.7 million in assets and $4.5 million in fund balance, which of course, under state law, the sanitation fund balance is restricted to be used for solid waste collection and management, and the street aid fund balance is restricted to be used on streets and right-of-ways. Okay, the operating statement for those two funds is on the next page. Sanitation had just over $1 million in revenue, and as most towns do with their sanitation, they spend what they collect, especially when you use third-party contractors. We don't see too many sanitation funds that show a big profit. And you spent almost the same amount on sanitation. Now, there is one thing to point out here. You budgeted $947,000 in revenue and $947,000 in expenditures, so you actually overspent your budget by about $50,000. And we do have a finding for that. It's not anything we're greatly concerned about. If you got to pick a fund to have an oversight on of amending the budget, that's the one to do it on, because it's the sanitation fund's just kind of money in, money out every month. Okay, on the street aid fund, you had $671,000 in revenue, $1.3 million in expenditures, for a deficit of $651,000, but you did transfer in $900,000. And I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but I do want to be sure I remind you, which I think I do from time to time, that you can spend money out of the general fund on the streets. You don't have to put it in the street aid fund. But when you do transfer it to the street aid fund, all of the restrictions that apply to that fund by operation of state law then automatically apply to the money you transferred in. So that's a good reason to sometimes, if you got things that don't exactly qualify under the state law for state street aid, leave some of the street money in the general fund and pay those out of the general fund. But y'all have always done that, and it's always worked, so it's fine. Okay, if you'll flip to page 112. These 112 and 113, these are the other two pages in the report that we actually own. This is our report on internal control and compliance. We're required under our standards to look at your internal controls for any material deficiencies, and also to look at compliance with laws and regulations as they might materially affect your financial statements. And if we find any significant issues, we're required to report those. We did find one, and that's what I had previously mentioned. We did have an overrun in the solid waste fund. Now, you would think that a $50,000 overrun of your budget with some of the big numbers I've been talking about wouldn't be all that significant. But we have to look at it and whether it's material, to see if it's material to the overall financial statements, but also just to that fund. And so unfortunately, that $50,000 overrun was material to that fund. Just so you'll know, if you got to have a finding about overspending your budget on a fund like the solid waste fund, where all you're doing is collecting fees and then paying the garbage collection bill, I mean, that's the best place to have one, if you got to have one. Okay. A new requirement, our finding is on page 114. A new requirement this year is on 116. The state Comptroller's Office requires a specific corrective action plan for findings. We've never had that experience with you all where we made a finding and you just didn't do anything about it. We've had that with other municipalities, unfortunately. And the Comptroller's Office a couple of years ago just got tired of that. Apparently it happens a lot. And they just said, okay, we want a specific response that says who, what, when, and where. Who's going to take care of the problem and when they're going to get it done. This one's easy to fix. You just be sure next year that you amend your budget when you get towards the end of June, which I think you all normally do. Okay, we had another letter we gave you, a management letter that had a couple of minor issues in it. We looked at your gas usage, and I don't think there's anything inappropriate about your gas usage, but we do recommend that the person directly responsible for that do some reconciling every month, make sure that the gas you purchase somehow equates with the gas that you use. And it got done, but I believe it got done while we were here doing the audit, and it doesn't need to be done just because the auditors asked for it. It needs to be done every month as a routine thing. The other thing was just wanted to point out, there was with all the growth that towns like Arlington have, it's hard to keep up with what developers are doing and when you take ownership of what they build. It's not easy, and we've seen towns much bigger than Arlington struggle with it. We did find where there was an oversight in putting some assets on your books in a prior year, and it's just something you just got to watch, and that's mainly what we're saying there. Just be sure you pay attention to that. That when those bonds are coming up, because that's typically the time when the bond expires, that the developer's either got to go buy a new bond or he's got to give you possession of what they built, or work out some other kind of arrangement with you. So it's not a real big deal, because all it does, it increases your infrastructure, which increases your depreciation. But as far as cash in the bank, it doesn't have any meaning. But it is something that you do have to keep up with. So it's, and like I said, we have seen this before. We audited a town up Middle Tennessee that we were auditing right about the time they had to start putting infrastructure on their books. And it literally took them almost 10 years to find it all, because they had been kind of ignoring who owned what. And it was a little bit vague as to what they owned and what the developers still owned. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. Be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Always intriguing to see the numbers and trying to keep up with all the numbers that you're throwing out. I do know that I saw a couple of reactions from a couple people that I don't know if they have questions right now, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I do want to ask maybe Mr. Durant, just so for clarity for the board and while you're here, just so we can kind of get some clarity. On page 16, on the general fund, and I think I may know some of the answers, but I don't know enough. That's why I'm asking Mrs. Durant. So we had revenues of $9.7 million roughly, and you're showing the fund balances beginning $15 million and then the fund balance $16.9. I thought we were about $900,000 additional for the fund balance this year. So I'm trying to figure out where that million.
You had overages in revenues and a decrease in expense for roughly $1.9 million total. So you had increases in revenues and decreases that department heads left on the table. Brittany's estimate was 1.8, but when Mr. Hewitt went over the change in fund balance, it was 1.9.
And that was the $800,000 you talked about the other night at the budget meeting that was kind of left on the table. Okay.
Yeah.
And $350,000 of the expenses left on the table was fire.
Mm-hmm.
Roughly $100,000 was public works. I think there was $200,000 was general administration. So everybody leaves a little money on the table, it starts adding up. It's not typical for fire to
I will tell you, that's I mean, you all assess property taxes, so you obviously have to be cognizant of the financial condition and the fund balance, and you have to be able to justify the taxes that you assess. But we're seeing a disturbing trend in small towns where their fund balance is going negative, not just 1 year or 2 years, but year after year after year. And so I think it's very positive, and to y'all's credit, that yours is going the other way.
That's a good testament to how well your department has watched their money, that they're not spending unnecessarily.
And the, some of your underspending was related to capital outlay, and a lot of times that's just a timing issue. You plan on doing something in 1 year, and it just doesn't get done, and it gets done the next year.
Questions for Mr. Hewitt, Mrs. Durant?
We do acknowledge the help of your staff on this. I mean, they make our job here real easy. My staff always enjoys coming down to work here. It's enjoyable for them. I think the only thing I haven't done is one of your predecessors used to always ask me, rank you 1 to 10.
He said right
Yeah,
behind you.
yeah, he asked me this, I was gonna do it tonight. Nobody ever gets a 10, but y'all are getting close to a 9, I think. The thing that you need to watch, and is you are a fast-growing community. And I know the numbers, you know, the investments that you have, the fund balance that you have, to some people that might seem like a lot of money. But when you're growing fast, sometimes you might have a project that you don't want to borrow for. That you could have a year where you run $1 million deficit because of some project that you need to run. So it's, for this community, I think that size fund balance and that increase that you continue to have, it's a good thing.
Mrs. Durant, and on some of those numbers I asked a second ago, a lot of that was development fees from last year too, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Ms. Pardue was in my office earlier. One of the things that Mr. Hewitt didn't go over is in this report, you do have a budgeted to actual ratio that'll show you that breakdown, so you'll find those pages in here for the general fund only. So you'll see the original amount budget, the amended amount, the actual amount collected, and those differences by department. So by department, you'll be able to see. The only thing different in this audit report that you may not be used to is when it combines, when it says parks, that's Parks, Senior Citizen Center, and the library combined. If you need to see those in a format that you're accustomed to looking to, such as your budget work papers that we've been distributing, there is a revenue and expense report that we do at June 30th at the close of the year that's prior to audit that gives you all the line items that you're used to seeing within a budget, and it will give you those totals as well.
That-
Now, the audited figures do differ a little bit.
That begins on page 18 and it runs 18 to 36. That's why I didn't go over it. It's a lot of material to digest.
Yes. Any other questions for Mr. Hewitt or Mrs. Durant? Of course, I know with Mrs. Durant, you can ask anytime, but with Mr. Hewitt while he's here.
And I don't, anytime you want to call, I realize hand you 130-something page document and spend a few minutes talking about it and say, now what are your questions? That's a little bit unfair, so you can, I'd be happy to take a call from you if you got any specific questions, or I can come back down and meet with you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. We really
Okay.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we won't be, you don't have to stay if you don't want to, I understand. Unless you just want to stay till afterwards. I know you have to drive back to Jackson, I guess. Thank you. All right, on to Fire Department report. Chief Harville.
Good evening. This will be the activity report for the fire department for February 2019. We had a total of 89 responses. 41 of those were EMS, 48 were fire. We gave mutual aid 20 times and received it 11. We had 15 calls south of Interstate 40 and 6 on interstate. There was one instance where we were on another call and Shelby County responded here, and one instance where we had limited manpower. We had a total of 6 inspections, checked 1 smoke alarm. As you know, last month we also, 4 of us traveled to Appleton, Wisconsin, completed the pre-build for the Quint and we're anticipating, if everything goes well, to have it by the end of the year, probably at a minimum at GNW, so they can outfit it with our peripheral equipment. We also completed 8 hours of in-service training for residential concerns and decision-making. As you know, we postponed the process for our hires for the fire department, the 12 hires, from July 1 till the end of the year in anticipation of the SAFER grant, which we've applied for. In the process of applying for, we're using a third-party help grant entity that's helping us write that grant, and will submit it for us. We also, as a department, supported, and I believe the town as well, the line of duty death in Hickory With Fire Department, the passing of Chief Byrd. Several of our guys are close friends with Chief Byrd. Some were even on the scene with him when he passed away, so our prayers and concerns still go out for that family in Hickory With. As you, I don't know if you could tell our fancy new radio today, we are implementing the capital improvement project that's been on the books for several years now. We purchased our new Motorola radios. We received them back from Integrated Communications last week, and we received approval today from Shelby County Sheriff's Office and Shelby County Fire Department. All the work's been done for our portables. We're still in the process of installing our mobiles. We hope to have those up and running fully in maybe a week, and then the radios will be taken care of until they upgrade the 3 towers with Memphis and Shelby County. And last but not least, under the direction of Alderman Pardue and the Health and Safety Committee, we're bringing in an active shooter class open to the community. It's going to be held at the Safe Room this Saturday at 10 a.m. And immediately following the active shooter, we're going to give those in attendance a brief overview of the capabilities of the Safe Room. That concludes the report for the fire service.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Harple?
You shouldn't lose those radios with that bright color.
That's what everybody says, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes.
I thought maybe they were Bartlett's to match their fire engine.
Don't let our assistant chief hear that.
I will say, I was excited, in your last report, I was excited to see some updates on engine 49.
Yes, sir.
I know that's something I've asked about, I think since 7 years ago when I pulled up and it was sitting in the back parking lot out there just rusting. I thought that would be a really cool project for the town. I think that's going to be a good.
Our goal is, if it works out, Mayor, is to try to have it for the Christmas parade this year.
Great.
So that's our goal.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Have a few brief comments. Tomorrow, just so everyone knows, I'm heading up to Nashville. There's a Tennessee Economic Development meeting in Nashville that all the mayors from across the state were asked to participate in. And I think Governor Lee and Bob Rolfe are going to be there coordinating the meeting. So go up there and see what's going on across the state and see, what's going on. I do want to thank everyone for the retreat last week that we had. I know some couldn't make it, but it's still good to have some of that open and dialogue without just the formal process, just kind of kick back. So it was a good attended and good discussion. So I appreciate that. Budget, of course, we had budget meetings the other night, and of course, as we're looking at all these numbers, we know that that's still ongoing. I do want to thank Public Works. I know nobody's here from Public Works, but probably also Parks also, but a lot of work the last couple of weeks with all that rain, cleaning out stormwater ditches, and I saw them on the side of the road a lot, pouring down rain, cleaning out sewers, and we appreciate all the work that they've done. Mrs. Howell, would you like to give any chamber announcements?
Yes, next week's luncheon, everyone's invited because it's spring break and we want our numbers to, we're not gonna surpass the mayor's attendance at the February luncheon, but if you all can come out, we have Nikki Cochran from Exhibit A is speaking, and so that'll be a good luncheon. And then Taste of Arlington is a month away, and I've got tickets with me tonight. I'd even be willing to give you all tickets if you want to try to sell them to some of your friends and coworkers. You can take some tickets I have tonight, but I'd be glad to talk to you about that as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Howell on any chamber events? Of course, we also have other events next month. After the Taste of Arlington, we have Arlington in April, so that's a big one. I know that staff will be, Daniel's going to get his first feel of that, working with the community on that. So that's always a big one, so we're excited about that.
They do a good job. APTA.
They do.
a really good
APTA has really stepped up. A couple things Angela, I'm not gonna ask her to expand, but just so y'all know, I looked at her desk the other day and it was piled up. She was trying to catch up. There's a lot of pre-construction meetings or site plans coming forward. It looked like Regions started moving stuff and putting their silt fence up right in front of Kroger today, so Regions is about to be moving dirt. Some of you may or may not know, but Waffle House has turned in a plan, so that's just some things like that. They're gonna go next to First Tennessee, if all goes, but it is dangerous. But, so, I mean, it's just, and there's, you know, of course, with all the other projects, but the big one is, of course, we're gonna do here in a little bit is the road widening and hopefully the airline road to follow not too long after that. But we're, a lot going on, so it's about to get dirty. So all this rain and mud that we've had, it's about to see a lot of dust this summer. That's all I have. Does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make?
You know, I was up at the playground today. Of course, it was kind of sad, but, you know, maybe Kathy can expand on it just a little bit. So if there's any citizens in here need to know about why, but at least that we can bring it to the board meeting.
Mr. Carson was instrumental in hiring a certified playground inspector to do a safety assessment of playground dreams. The safety report came back not very favorable to keep the playground open, so it has been closed for some time. Discussed with the board last week how they wanted to proceed with that. It would be just as costly, if not more so, to rebuild what is there, to replace all the supporting beams and salvage what little bit of the parts that would be salvageable as it would be to replace it. A wood structure would only have a life expectancy of 15 years. A metal and plastic structure has a life expectancy of 30 years. The board kicked around the idea of saving the swing set, but when Mr. Perkins went out there with Mr. Carson and they probed those 8x8 posts, they were saturated through. The probe went straight through the bottom of those beams. So we did make the decision on Friday that when they went out there and started demo today, the swings would come down. The minute they put any pressure on those swings, they snapped. So it proved to be a wise decision. We did go back to the inspector and ask him to weigh back in on the decision to remove the swings. He said that he didn't believe very much the hardware was even salvageable. So what Mr. Carson is challenged to do now is to design another playground to go on that site. He's been working with several vendors, getting several quotes, kicking around the idea of maybe doing a smaller playground at College Hill. It's a smaller parking lot, not tiny like your top lots that you see at the sports complex or at the soccer fields, a little bit larger, still serve that age group, toddlers to 12-year-olds, have something for everyone, including swings, add that back into College Hill, and then in a couple of years apply for a LPRF grant, such as what we're working on now for the soccer fields, and do a larger community-type playground at Forest Street campus. So you'd have the smaller top lot on the soccer fields, which would serve the siblings of those who are playing soccer, which is a small unit in comparison, and then over near the farmer's market amphitheater somewhere that the board would designate on those two available lots, do a little bit larger regional or community playground after we qualify for additional funding. We are trying to save the tiles that were hand painted by the children. Those have all been taken off. We're going to try to repurpose them and reuse them in the same manner. We have saved all the pickets. We are going to save all the brick pavers. A few of the components on the top lot that were handmade by Mr. Mooney in his metalworking shop have been saved. The sign over the top lot, I believe, was special and has been saved. So anything that we could pull off and save as sentimental, we've done so. We thought we could save the FedEx plane and maybe use the FedEx plane, but it's in as bad shape as the fire engine, the little train engine. So it's just in as bad shape. There's not really any saving it or repurposing it either. But we are looking at several different options that would work within whatever the budget is that the board ultimately approves for beginning July 1 to see what we can do as soon as possible to get that replaced in some manner.
Thank you for that update. It's funny.
Like I walked it with Mr. Perkins and Daniel after I talked with Kathy last Thursday. They met me up there and we went through it all. And it, of course, I'd already seen it, but I'd asked for them to double check the swing set thing just in case. But when they checked it, it just was down below, it was just like soup. There'd been so much mulch and stuff.
Yeah, mulch will destroy lots of stuff. Just as we were speaking, I got a text or two from somebody on the Parks and Rec Committee asking about the park. It's just so happened. This isn't a live meeting, so I looked around to see if I was being. So I know that's going to be a hot topic of discussion, especially as it warms up. I do know that it's going to be something that we need to address as a board. When Harry approached me the other night asking, my thoughts on something smaller at College Hill and something larger eventually down at Forest, I didn't respond because I didn't really know it was kind of the first thing. And I went home, slept on it. And I remember coming up the next morning and talking with Kathy and Angela and saying, that's not a bad idea. And so.
I wasn't asking for a response.
I know you weren't. I trust me, Harry. I know you weren't. So you're always very careful in that. But I'm just saying, as far as floating the idea. So no, but I think it's definitely something that Daniel. I mean, I'm not speaking for the board now, but I know, in my opinion, I know the discussion at the retreat the other night was, should we or should we not right now and all that. And I don't see how we can put off doing something at. Just me personally, at College Hill Park, ASAP for, I don't know what size or what the price range is for something like I was explaining to somebody, like the one behind Donaldson Elementary, the one they just bought tonight. I don't know what the price of that was. But it's, something that's larger, like you said, than the other ones. But I think if we just tear that down, it sits vacant. And as according to this Parks and Rec member too, that they're already starting to have concerns about it moving up. So I think it's sooner the better, in my opinion, of trying to figure out what we're going to do there.
Yes, sir. You don't have it this year's budget. You don't have it this year.
I know I don't, but still, I'm just saying I don't think it's something that I think it's something
If
we.
you want to authorize a budget amendment to allow that, we'd be more than happy to entertain the idea.
Well, that would take some actual presentation to the board to actually know how much something's going to cost.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So either way, whether it's.
If you're asking us to pursue that, we'll look into having something for you next month.
Well, I would like to see something done sooner than later if within reason. That's just me, and I don't want to. I know we're not really in discussion mode on it, but I guess when I saw some of the numbers tonight too, I know we've talked about some of the money going back into reserves. We can always spend money out of reserves. We can spend the money that we're selling the properties for across the street, but I would like to know what the impact it would have right now, whether it's an amendment for this year or whether it's added in next year's budget. That's just me personally. And whether we do either one of them is up to the board.
We do
But,
have some money in next year, but.
yeah, so I don't know if the board agrees, at least to see a number to see what we're looking at.
The only reason I said something about it down there, whether we do the farmer's market, whether we don't, whatever, something to attract some more people down to that area. And I'm just thinking, if that's not right, then, I'll go along with what everybody agrees with, of course, but just somewhere closer, maybe closer to Vinegar Gyms or something like that, where people can walk to it and walk straight down to the Depot Square area, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I discussed it with Gerald and tried to get his ideas, and before I said anything to you about it.
Well, and again, I'm just asking, I guess, for Daniel and Kathy to see what the idea is about what the estimated cost is, and then whether it's in a formal or informal setting, approach the board and let us just kind of start that dialogue. You have anything you want to say, Daniel?
I've been working on it behind the scenes a little bit, anticipating this day coming. I just kind of need to ask Ms. Kathy and Mr. Rand to give me kind of what y'all want to do. You can do a playground for any amount. It just depends on how big you want it to be. One of the things I'm big on is making sure it's a zero level entry, which means kids with wheelchairs can get access to it, and having a turf surfacing with foam underneath it instead of having mulch. Because if you look at some of the pictures I took today, they're 3 to 4 feet deep
Yeah.
in mulch.
We don't want to do mulch again.
And so that's the biggest part of the expense is actually the servicing. And then you can put whatever playground equipment you want. I've already meeting with several playground providers, different equipment providers, they are asking me what I want in the playground, and I can design whatever playground you want. There can be some parameters to operate with me.
Well, I guess just, man, I feel like I'm not trying to give you direction from the board, but I'm just saying, I guess we just need to have maybe option A, B, or C. And, you know, and when I say that, what is, and I may be wrong on these numbers, what does 100,000 get you? What does 150,000 get you? What does 200,000 get you? You know, I guess in that type of range, if we're not gonna go all out on that, to replace that as a regional playground, and then focus on doing a regional playground somewhere else. I do think we're gonna need one again, and I think we're probably all about to start hearing about this one right now. But as long as we can get something in writing to let the board kind of think about, and then, like I said, we can look at what's left, if there's ways to do it in this year's budget or with an amendment, or if there's ways, if we have it in next year's budget and it helps next year's budget process too, I don't know. But I would like to see something sooner rather than later, I don't know.
Daniel's getting ready to go on vacation, so we'll work on that when he gets back. He's been working on it for quite some time. We'll get that before you and give you some options to choose. In the meantime, we will post on Facebook in the morning that the sentimental items that people seem to be so passionate about will be saved and reincorporated. I think that's where most of your calls are going to come from.
Mr. Brooks?
You know, the park that I actually get the most comments about its usefulness and the layout and the scheme of what's at the park is Mary Alice Park. Believe it or not, more people comment on the structures that are there than any other park in the community. So something similar, that scale, maybe, some usefulness like that.
It's something that, like I said, I've been working on for a while, so I wanted to have a plan. I'm not a certified playground inspector, but I looked at it and felt, and I dealt with big playgrounds before, I felt like before the inspector even came, that it wasn't gonna be favorable. So then I wanted to have a plan in place, should it have to come down. And I can just tell you, watching it come down, we saved ourselves a lot of grief in the near future, because there are structures that we could push on that were snapping, like that. So it's quite amazing that we're still standing after all this time. But, I agree with you, Mayor. I think if it's something we can do now,
Just save me about that much on one of those big swing posts. I bear hugged most of those and stuck them in the ground, so about that much, that's all I want.
You want one just to sit on that back, huh? Okay.
He's inviting you to go dumpster
Thank you.
Actually, you can pick one up on the way home.
Probably get one on the way up.
All right, any other comments or, I guess, guidance from the board, even though it's not official guidance, but anything anybody else would like to see or disagree with right now, I guess, to make sure that Daniel and Kathy both know what's kind of expected. And I don't know if those are the right numbers I threw out. I was just throwing some numbers out as far as like an ABC is what I was saying.
I can do that. The number in the budget right now for next year is $300,000.
Okay.
So if y'all want to steal it within that parameter, absolutely, I can present it.
I'd say give us one that's, again, the economy version, the mid version.
Low, middle, high.
And low, middle, high is what I'm saying. So,
I would just say that, I echo what the mayor's saying. And doing that also, would want to hear, or hear from Oscar representing the Parks and Rec as it moves on. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Larry is Parks and Rec, never mind. I apologize about that.
But, yeah.
The Larry on the Parks and Rec as you guys kind of look and talk with Daniel through the process. And then I'll try to stop by in the next couple of days and talk with Ms. Durant about as well. But, it's one that heartache for everybody to see it come down and not there. But we've also got summer months coming up, and we've got limited options for kids out here to do. We've got more than we used to, but, we'll get through it. But at the same time, I would like to see us go ahead and move and at least get an idea of if this is doable or not and what the price tag would look like.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to add is good job. That's not a very popular thing to come to the town and have to tell them that their nicest, what considered their nicest playground is dangerous. But I think it showed a lot of courage, and so I appreciate that.
I hope you get the phone calls I got today.
My wife sent me some, I'm off Facebook, but my
Yeah.
wife sent it
All
to
right.
me.
Good
They're
grief.
saying on Facebook.
all right. All right, any other questions or comments before we move on to the treasurer's report? No. Okay.
Committee report.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
Yes,
go
committee
ahead.
reports, yes.
Okay.
The Health and Safety Committee met in January, and we would like to propose to the board implementing an Officer of the Year program award with Shelby County Sheriff's Department in appreciation for the work that they do for our town residents. There is a program that already exists in the Fraser community where they submit to Shelby County Sheriff's Office to send them some submittals for their committee to review, and the committee then chooses the particular award winner for that year. And so we would like to get your opinions and hopefully move forward with such a program.
Actually, Mickey Keaton contacted me too. I don't know if he did you. Did he? Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I told him that I would push it off on Cheryl a little bit.
When I spoke with you, I think it's a great idea. So,
I not only think that, I think maybe we ought to go
Add the fire
fire and police. I don't think we should do one without the other.
I'd do both if we're
Yep.
gonna do it.
At least,
Sounds good to me.
that's my recommendation.
Yeah, because I have seen recently, just on several of the pages, Germantown has a program, Barta has a program where they're recognizing. So I think anybody, not that police, fire, military, whoever asked to be recognized, but I think when you do receive recognition, it's a pretty proud moment. So,
Thank you.
okay, great, thank you. Anything else from your report? Any other committee reports? Treasurer's report?
Treasurer's report. All right, in the general fund, we had a beginning balance of $2,997,289.87. An ending balance of $733,538.29. In our sewer fund, we had a beginning balance of $2,141,339.53, and an ending balance of $2,101,982.71.
Any questions on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Of course, we have one item on the consent agenda. I don't even have to read it. If I can have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. McKee,
Second.
second by Mr. Biggs or Mr. Harmon, whichever. Any objection to approving the consent agenda? Seeing none, that item passes. Any old business, Mrs. Durant, that we need to add in? On to new business. Item A, Resolution 2019-10 to authorize Mike Wisman in his capacity as mayor of the town of Arlington to issue a special event permit for the Arlington in April PTA. Mrs. Durant, or is this going to you? It says.
That's one that was just on.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, I didn't mean to read that. So I have two item A's, that's my fault. Resolution 2019-11 to authorize Mike Wisman in his capacity as mayor for the town of Arlington to enter into a contract with White Construction, for construction services on Highway 70 widening from Interstate 385 to Airline Road in accordance with TDOT requirements. Mrs. Durant.
Town of Arlington published a notice to contractors in the Daily News on January 29th, 2019. On February 21st, 2019 at 2 p.m., 3 bids were opened and read aloud, with White Construction being your lowest responsive bidder in the amount of $1,148,696.50. This is a TDOT matching grant that's already been approved by the board. You do have before you, that was not in your packet, a bid tab, a letter of recommendation from Drake Danley with Kimley Horn, who is the engineer that was instrumental in designing the project, and a letter to the state of Tennessee asking for concurrence. Staff would ask for your approval pending TDOT concurrence on this item, please.
You've heard the recommendation by Mr. Durant. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Brooks.
Second.
Second by Mr. McKee. Any discussion or questions? I know this has been a long time coming, so
Length of the project and start date, maybe?
180 days.
180 days. Start or length?
Well, we will give a notice of, notice to proceed as soon as we have a pre-construction. So after today, we give them a notice of award, then we have to get all the contract documents back. We have a pre-construction. At the pre-construction, both parties agree on the start date.
Okay.
any other questions for Mrs. Durant?
Won't be.
Just glad it's happening.
Yes. All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? That item passes. Next up, item B, Resolution 2019-12 to authorize Mike Wisman in his capacity as mayor of the town to execute the Second Amendment of Agreement to purchase a sale of real estate with Wind Delta Property Holdings LLC. Mr. Lawson.
You recall, we had a First Amendment at the last board meeting, no, a special call meeting, I'm sorry, about a couple of weeks ago, where we extended the due diligence period for the Wind Delta, who's putting the Wendy's behind where Public Works used to be. There was a concern that came up during the due diligence period. They wanted an additional restrictive covenant on the adjacent lot that fronts Airline Road. And negotiating that back and forth, getting with staff and speaking with you individually, we've now proposed a Second Amendment with Wind Delta that they're agreeing to, where we're restricting that secondary, that one-off lot, not at the corner, not the one in the back, to about 7 or 8 different specific fast food users that we would not be able to sell or locate on for a period of 7 years. That 7 years starts at closing. It does not start when the Wendy's opens or when they've been construction or anything like that. It starts at closing. So they are satisfied with that, and their due diligence expires at the end of the week. So if you approve this, we'll execute the contract, and I expect that the closing will occur sometime probably in early to mid-April.
You've heard the recommendation by Mr. Lawson. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Mrs. Pardue, second by Mr. Harmon. Discussion or questions? I know we discussed this some at our retreat also, so I don't know if everybody's clear on it. If there's any questions, now's the time.
I'm clear, I'm just not keen on 7 years.
I know. It's one of those things we could drag this out, but
I'd rather be less too, and I think we all have, but I think we got it a little better than what they were asking. It was a lot better than what they originally proposed. Originally it was unlimited and restricted pretty much any kind of food service or even catering structure on there. And again, their initial, even come back after that was 20 years. So 7 years, we'll just have to go to Crystals in Lakeland for the next 7 years.
And we did clarify, we did clarify this is from the sale of the closing. This is from the closing date, right? Okay.
Closing date.
So even if they sit on it and don't build for 2 years, that doesn't start a 7-year window. Okay, that's wrong.
7 years, I gotta drive to that one.
There's other lots in our town.
Yes,
That's right.
yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Lawson?
We feel pretty good. It doesn't diminish the value of the property based on this
You're
agreement.
getting, honestly, you're getting so much more for the corner than we probably were gonna get for
Okay.
anything else. I think that offsets that.
Okay.
And that's what we discussed at the retreat, was that we were able to up the price there some to kind of offset, so it seemed like a reasonable.
If you recall, they kind of got in the bidding war anyway to buy that, so that price went up significantly.
Any other questions for Mr. Lawson? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes. Any other new business, Mrs. Durant? All right, do I have a motion to approve the bills for payment?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Brooks. Second by Mr. Pardue. Any objection to paying the bills? Seeing none, that passes. Any other announcements, Mrs. Durant or staff? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. I got a motion and a second, and I think a unanimous favor.
Cheryl,
This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
we're out of town